Welcome to another episode of the Part 145 EASA training from Phoenix Way Academy. Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi, and I'm Sam.
Well, in this episode, we will continue the topic of 145.A Part 200 Management System Part 2. Let's actually look at the letter of the law for our first section. I am looking at the text for Clause GM1, 145.A.200, Paragraph A. Point 1.
And the subject there is the management system, specifically the safety action group.
Right. I will read points A through D verbatim for you right now. Point A states, depending on the size of the organization and the nature and complexity of its activities, a safety action group may be established as a standing group, or as an ad hoc group to assist, or act on behalf of the safety manager or the safety review board.
And point B adds to that.
It does. Point B states, more than one safety action group may be established, depending on the scope of the task and the specific expertise required.
Okay, and who do they report to?
Point C covers that. It states, the safety action group usually reports to and takes strategic direction from the safety review board and may be composed of managers, supervisors, and personnel from operational areas.
So it's a real mix of staff.
Exactly. And finally, point D outlines their exact tasks. Number 1, monitor safety performance. Number 2, define risk control actions. Number 3, assess safety impact of changes. Number 4, ensure timely safety actions. And number 5, review action or promotion effectiveness.
What's fascinating here is the sheer adaptability built into this regulation. The regulators are not mandating a rigid, permanent boardroom committee here.
Right. It can be a standing group, sure.
But it can also be entirely ad hoc. Its size and structure depend completely on the complexity of your specific organization.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second. In a fast-paced maintenance environment where turnarounds are tight, doesn't an ad hoc safety action group just add more red tape?
You'd think so, but
Doesn't it just create a bottleneck?
not if it is applied correctly, and that is the beauty of point A. It scales to the need.
Nah.
Imagine your organization has decided to move its entire maintenance operation to a brand new, significantly larger hangar on the other side of the airfield.
Okay, big move.
Massive move. You do not necessarily need a permanent year-round committee sitting in an office to manage that risk. Instead, you set up a temporary, highly focused ad hoc safety action group.
Ah, I see.
Their sole mandate is to assess the safety impact of moving to that specific new hangar.
And looking at point C, you wouldn't just stock that group with executives. You would draw people from all levels. You grab the facility managers, the floor supervisors, and most importantly, the operational staff who actually turn the wrenches and know where the tripping hazards are going to be.
Precisely. And once the move is complete and the new hangar is safely integrated into daily operations, that specific group dissolves. They go back to their normal duties.
So to summarize Section 1, the core principle is that the Safety Action Group is an operational engine. It reports to the Safety Review Board, but it handles those 5 key tasks on the ground: monitoring, defining actions, assessing change, ensuring timelines, and reviewing effectiveness.
Now, if that group is taking action on the floor, who is ultimately on the hook if something goes wrong?
Good question.
That brings us to a really short but incredibly vital distinction in the text. This is Clause GM2 145.A.200, Paragraph A, Point 1.
Management system, meaning of terms.
Right. I'll read the exact text. Point A defines accountability as a non-delegable obligation, and Point B defines responsibility as a delegable obligation.
Okay, let's unpack this. This highlights how crucial English language nuances are in aviation safety law. We use the words accountable and responsible interchangeably in casual conversation all the time.
We do, yeah.
But in a legal framework, confusing them can lead to massive systemic failures.
Let's map that onto a concrete scenario. Picture a senior maintenance manager overseeing a massive base maintenance check. This manager cannot be everywhere at once.
No, of course not.
So they can absolutely delegate the responsibility of conducting a highly specific daily safety walk-around on the hangar floor to a trusted shift supervisor. The supervisor is now responsible for physically doing the task. They hold the clipboard.
But if that supervisor fundamentally botches the check, if they miss a massive glaring safety hazard, the manager can't just point the finger at the supervisor to avoid regulatory trouble.
Exactly. Because the accountability for that check, the ultimate answerability to the regulatory authority, cannot be delegated. It is permanently anchored to the manager.
So the vital takeaway for this section is that responsibility is an obligation you can hand off, but accountability is a non-delegable burden. The buck stops with the accountable manager.
So if that accountability rests entirely on the manager's shoulders, how do they actually broadcast their expectations to hundreds of mechanics on the floor?
Through the safety policy.
Exactly. Let's look at clause AMC 1-145.A.200, paragraph A.2. Management system, safety policy, and objectives.
I will read the core excerpts from clauses A through D, stating the exact text. Clause A states the safety policy should 1. Reflect safety, commitment, and a positive culture. 2. Encourage error, incident, and hazard reporting. 3. Require cooperation with monitoring and investigations. 4. Be endorsed by the accountable manager. 5. Be communicated organization-wide. And 6. Be periodically reviewed.
And clause B is where the rubber meets the road regarding what those commitments actually are.
Right, the policy commitments. Point B states the policy must 1. Comply with laws and improve safety. 2. Provide resources. 3. Apply human factors and consider fatigue. 4. Prioritize safety for managers. And 5. Apply just culture, avoid blame, and use data for safety only.
We really need to pause on that last point.
Just culture.
Yes, if we connect the dots here, a safety policy must be more than just a document. It requires visible endorsement from the accountable manager and must be communicated everywhere. But that just culture principle is the absolute bedrock.
Let's really dig into what just culture looks like for you on a random Thursday night shift. Imagine an operational staff member is working a heavy C-check on an aircraft. It is 3 in the morning. They are dealing with severe fatigue toward the end of a very long rotation, and they accidentally drop a heavy, calibrated tool, potentially damaging a critical flight control component.
Under an old punitive system, that technician might be terrified of losing their job. They might be tempted to put the tool away, pretend it didn't happen, and hope the damage isn't severe.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
It is how accidents happen. But under a true just culture, avoiding blame is paramount. Frontline personnel aren't punished when their actions align with their training.
Right, so that technician reports the error immediately. They cooperate fully with the internal investigation without fear of liability, provided the honest mistake was commensurate with their experience.
The organization doesn't look for someone to fire. They look at the system. They look at the shift scheduling, the lighting, the fatigue management protocols. The data is used strictly to improve the safety system.
To round out the section, I'll read clauses C and D. Clause C states senior management promotes policy and ensures resources. And Clause D covers safety objectives. It states they must 1. Be the basis for performance monitoring. 2. Reflect system effectiveness commitment. 3. Be communicated organization-wide. And 4. Be periodically reviewed.
So to summarize, safety policies ensure legal compliance, prioritize safety, apply human factors like fatigue, and form the bedrock for measurable safety objectives.
And to deepen that foundation, let's look at the guidance material that supports it. This is GM1 145.A.200, paragraph A.2, Management System, Safety Policy.
I can take this one. Paragraph A states the policy states intend to maintain and improve safety and minimize accident risk. It reflects safety commitment and culture. Paragraph B states that just culture forms the basis for internal rules. And paragraph C states, for member states, just culture is per regulation, using number 376/2014, Article 16, paragraph 11.
Okay, let's look at the focus of paragraph A. It serves as a reminder of how we do business here. It takes this abstract concept of safety management and turns it into the daily operational DNA of the workforce.
It establishes a positive safety culture and minimizes accident risks as far as reasonably practicable.
And for organizations in Europe, paragraph C doesn't just leave you guessing.
Not at all. A member state uses Regulation EU AU number 376/2014 as the literal blueprint for writing their internal HR and safety handbooks to guarantee just culture.
So the core takeaway is that the safety policy is the foundation of the management system, turning theoretical just culture into concrete internal rules.
Which brings us to the final and definitely the most robust section of our deep dive today. We have talked about the theory, the groups, and the policies. Now we are looking at the actual execution.
This is clause AMC 1-145.A.200, paragraph A.3, Management System, Safety Management Key Processes.
Because of the density here, we are going to tactically read the core definitions of processes A through G aloud, explicitly keeping that clause number in mind.
I'll start with paragraph A, hazard identification. Point 1 requires a formal scheme to collect, record, analyze, and act on hazards or events affecting safety. Point 2 says it includes human factors and organizational or complex arrangement hazards, for example, multiple contractors.
In paragraph B is risk management. Point 1 requires a formal process to analyze probability and severity, assess tolerability, and mitigate risks to acceptable levels. Point 2 says you must define management levels for risk tolerability decisions.
Let's ground those two paragraphs with a real-life scenario involving those complex arrangements. Imagine an aircraft is in the hangar for a major overhaul, and you have multiple subcontractors working on it simultaneously. You have your in-house mechanics, a specialized avionics contractor, and an outsourced cabin interior team.
That is a prime environment for things to fall through the cracks.
Exactly. Suppose a hazard is identified during a shift handover between the avionics tech who disabled a system and the sheet metal worker who is about to drill near it. Under a strong hazard identification scheme, someone recognizes that miscommunication and records it.
And then the risk management process kicks in. You take a reactive approach by analyzing the event. You take a proactive approach by looking for similar handovers. And you take a predictive approach by analyzing the severity and probability of that breakdown leading to an accident.
Right, and once you assess tolerability, the specified management level decides on the mitigation.
Let's move to the next processes. Paragraph C is internal investigation. Point 1 says you investigate incidents, like errors or near misses, per just culture to prevent recurrence, focusing on causes. Point 2 says it covers reports required by 145.A.200, paragraph B, going beyond the requirements of 145.A.60.
And paragraph D is safety performance monitoring. Point 1 is to verify performance against safety policy and objectives. Point 2 includes reporting, trend reviews, like for new products or procedures, audits, surveys, and automated indicators per organization size.
I want to point out something crucial in the internal investigation clause. You have to ask how it happened, not who did it.
Right. Tying back to our drop tool example.
Exactly. And you monitor the success of those investigations via audits, surveys, and trend reviews, as outlined in paragraph D. If you see a spike in reports, you review the trends.
Let's cover the final three processes. Paragraph E is management of change. It says to identify safety-affecting changes using hazard identification and risk mitigation processes.
Changes inherently threaten existing controls.
Yes, they do. Paragraph F is continuous improvement. This is achieved via external audits, safety culture assessments, staff surveys, incident monitoring, performance indicators, and lessons learned.
And finally, paragraph G is immediate safety action and ERP. Point 1 requires prompt action for flight safety concerns, with owner, operator, or CAMO contact instructions. Point 2 says you must support the operator's ERP if triggered by Part 145.
The urgency of that emergency response plan cannot be overstated. You need immediate instructions on who to contact.
So when you summarize these 7 pillars, hazard identification, risk management, internal investigation, performance monitoring, management of change, continuous improvement, and the ERP, they function together. They are an ongoing continuous loop rather than a one-time checklist.
They feed into each other every single day.
I'd like to offer a final thought for you to mull over based strictly on the text we just covered.
Go ahead.
Considering the requirement for continuous improvement and predictive risk management, a true safety management system is never actually finished. It is a living ecosystem that must evolve every single day.
In the next episode, we will continue 145.A.200 management system.
Follow us on social media under the name Phoenix Way Academy.
Thanks for listening. Stay safe and stay informed.